So, hello and welcome, everyone. This is Sachin Gaur from the India EU ICT Standards Project. And today we have a very exciting topic, which is blockchain use cases from EU and India and possible synergies. And this is the 20th webinar of our webinar series between the two standards body from India and the EU, namely HC and TSDSI. And there are four top experts joining me today from Europe and India. From the European side, we have Mr. Rapulas Lakavikus, who is a policy officer with the DG Connect. And Rapulas is working with DG Connect and mainly focusing on blockchain standardization. And prior to this work, he has been with European research framework, Horizon 2020 projects, and broadband internet policies. Prior to joining European Commission, he was working with the SEB Bank in Vilnius and has been a consultant preparing economic and finance feasibility studies for EU funding. He also holds a master's degree in economics from Vilnius University. So welcome, Rapulas, in joining us today and sharing your views. We have Mr. Ismail Aribas, who is a global entrepreneur and committed with standards on blockchain and DLTs. I think one of the key contribution, apart from being running a successful company, he is also a founding member of INATPA, which I believe is one of the leading initiative right now on the blockchain applications. And I believe they had a very successful event last year in Malaga in Spain, and I request Ismail later to share with us examples that he see globally from the INATBA work, how it is going, and he's also going to make a presentation today on the use case. And next we have Mr. Pavan, who is from India, and he runs a very exciting use case driven blockchain use case driven company called as Chitmonks, which is a very India centric use case. And I believe that it would require some education to the global audience what chit funds are about. And we really welcome you, Pavan, to joining us today. And he comes from the state of Telangana, and he has been closely working with the government in making this sector, let's say, more transparent and citizen friendly. And last we have Mr. Siddharth Durba, who's one of the most active person, I should say, in the blockchain community here in India, and very knowledgeable person. He's coming from KPMG. He's associate director with doing risk consulting for KPMG India. Welcome, Siddharth. Happy to have you today here. While Siddharth is not making a presentation today, but he would be, orally sharing some of the topics from Indian side. And later, once we are done with the three presentations from Rapulas, Ismail, and Pavan, Siddharth would also be moderating this session, and he would be also asking some tough questions to all of them. So at this point, I request all the audience who have already joined us, if you have a question, please type it out using the questions tab as and when you can. But we will first have 7-8 minutes presentation each from Mr. Rapulas, Ismail, and Pavan in that order, and then followed by Siddharth. And over to you, Rapulas, if I may request you to start your presentation. And I'm running your slides, so I may request you indicate to me whenever you want to change the slides.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. So thank you very much for very nice introduction. I am Rapulas Lakavičius, Policy Officer at the European Commission, DG Connect. And we can probably start with the presentation. Maybe it's possible. The first slide, please. Hello, is it possible to change the slide?
Yeah, so we are on the first slide already. Do you want me to change the slide?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead, Raplas.
I don't see the slide changed.
Yeah, it takes a while, so please go ahead.
Okay, okay. I think I will just continue. So basically, in the European Commission, blockchain is very important, and the European Commission, together with the member states, has developed a strategy to approach rollout of blockchain enabling technology. Importance of this is because basically blockchain is as distributed technology, as distributed data storage, and also trusted data storage is very interesting to increase trust among the member states, first of all, because in Europe we have 28, maybe soon 27 member states, and this technology is trust enabling technology. So for EU strategy, we have five main aspects that are being worked on. First one is joint political vision to establish European blockchain partnership, and precisely this partnership I will develop later on. Other four basically parts are public-private partnership in ADBA, of which Ismail will make more presentation there, but this is a global initiative. And then thirdly, we have a connecting expertise. We have blockchain observatory and forum. If there is some interest, they have a website where they are updating all possible new things and developments on the side of the blockchain. Then we have quite a lot of investments in research and innovation and startups. And also we are working on enabling digital single market, legal framework, interoperable standards, skills development, of which actually ISO TC307 is integral part of. Please, next slide. So the very main topic of this particular presentation is European blockchain partnership. Uh, this partnership was established in 2018 with 22 member states and Norway signing a political declaration to set up blockchain services infrastructures in Europe. And further on, this partnership was developing, and more member states were joining. Currently, we have basically all member states and additional countries, even such as Liechtenstein, actually joining this partnership. So it gets some political traction, and also it has some interest of participating countries at really high political level. Please, next slide. This partnership has confirmed the four use cases which are being currently developed by the European Commission. Basically, we have a DG which works with development of various software applications for various needs of the Commission and also of European member states. And this DG is actually working with development these four use cases, of which I would like to basically these four use cases. First one is notarization, then second one is self-sovereign identity, third one is diplomas, and fourth one is trusted data sharing. Of these four, two use cases I have proposed for considering for ISO TC307 as possible examples of ISO architecture, because all these four use cases are being developed, first of all, based on ISO TC307 architecture. And currently what we have is self-sovereign identity use case has been agreed by ISO working group to use as an example. And it's interesting because it's a possibility to show GDPR requirements in reality, because in the EU we have a lot of privacy related requirements, and which are basically written out in general privacy the directive, and basically it's really difficult to comply with these. And this example is really the one which shows how to implement them in European level. And then another one that we have is diploma use case, which is currently still being developing, but here the diploma is very interesting for educational perspective, And education as such is very international area, and given that it's very international, it gives a lot of possibilities for international collaboration. So thus here there is an intention to collaborate with India and other international entities for other parts of the world to have some sort of blockchain enabled diploma and educational credentials exchange solution that would be interoperable among different parts of the world. So this is quite a challenging vision, but probably it will be possible to have this one implemented. The other two use cases, actually notarization and trusted data sharing. So first of all, notarization is as a use case is just verification of various entries into the blockchain. So it's as such is pretty simple. And secondly, notarization probably is not the right word, because the right name of this use case should be verification, because it just verifies credentials. It has nothing to do with things that notaries are doing. So likely in the future we will rename this use case to verification. And trusted data sharing use case is more for tax purposes, for VAT accounting. VAT is value-added tax, which has particular European application. It's something very much specific to EU single market. So it's a nice use case, but likely more of European scale. So here is probably not so considered. But the two ones, the self-sovereign identity and diplomas, are really interesting for international collaboration. So that's from my side. This is it, and I think we can continue with Ismail presenting European use cases from private sector side and representing basically INATBA public-private partnership.
Thank you, Rapolas, and now we welcome Ismail. Over to you, Ismail, for a quick presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, India community, and thank you, the European Commission, for this invitation for ICT collaboration. This is me. I was working in the financial sector, and in 2006, with my sister, launched Kumfut, because we detected a miscommunication between the banks and the consumers. And we decided to provide a kind of security mercantile concept for compliance. In 2016, I was transforming my business, because it was a business based on just two simple stamps within the documents, physical stamps. But later on, you will see my scope and my spectrum transforming into a digital business model. But it was not enough, because blockchain and DLT was disrupting different areas of the global economy and the civil society. So I consider that the standards could be the appropriate vehicle to help the real projects, the startups community and entrepreneurship, and also the big companies and the government. And standards was the vehicle we decided to be committed. In the picture was one of my success. Personally, by the International Telecommunication Union, I was awarded with a certificate of appreciation for my contributions to the deliverables. In the last year, there were a lot of movements, and as Rapolas explained very well, the European space was moving. And in Brussels was launching an international association for trustee blockchain applications, which is INATBA. It was configured organically by this General Assembly, further with a board of directors and different kind of groups and governmental advisory board, academic board, other supporting boards, and the standardization committee. There is also a membership committee for anyone in the world who wants to approach to us with these different categories: large enterprise, medium enterprise, small enterprise, micro enterprise, and non-profit associations. The good thing of INATBA, it was the success that was mentioned before about the good convergence event we had in Spain, in Malaga. It was the first global meeting for convergence in these technologies. And INATBA was already configured by different working groups. Personally, my microenterprise is founding member and is proactively helping in the social impact working group. I am co-chair elected by the working group for interoperability, very proactive in governance for things that you are going to see later on in my presentation. I am with the co-chairs of the working group of energy, and I was designing this week leader for the subgroup of climate change. I am helping under the leadership of the subgroup with the identity working group for the sandboxes. I'm helping in the privacy working group on real estate, and for sure in the climate action. I am appointed with the co-chair of governance to be the co-chairs of the standardization committee, which is very close to be established. This week is a prominent conference to have decisions about the minimal governance model of the standardization committee. And thanks to a vacancy, I was appointed to be one of the candidates as microenterprise to the board I explained before. But the good thing of INATBA is that it's international. And there were some meetings with the government, with the public sector, with the European Blockchain Partnership, which was explained perfectly by Rapolas, is the 30 countries joining together efforts to create the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure and the European Self-Sovereign Identity Framework as one of the use cases. The environment of Europe and the environment of INATBA allow the private sector to talk directly in a face-to-face and remotely with shameless straight away about our concerns in the private activities. So it was very richness, and it was very clear and transparency by the European Blockchain Partnership and the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, all the details about which is the future. Right now, we are under the version 0.1 of EPSI, just running this month, and March, hopefully version 2.0. With all this escape, I wanted to explain a little bit more my working area. As I said before, I transformed my business into a digital one, but it was very beginning when I met Bitcoin blockchain. That technology allowed me to understand that I will not need any more these physical stamps, which were impossible to falsify. So in 2016, we had already very advances in our progression, and we integrated a triple anchor to 3 blockchains in 2017. And right now we are running 27 nodes for different proposals and different records in different blockchains, converting our company in a kind of oracle for matching the governance of chain and the governance on chain in business. One key impact in our activities was the World Telecommunication and Information Society Day in 2016, because we launched Lumiversity, and it was qualified an ICT entrepreneurship for social impact. Lumiversity, it is a decentralized altruistic community. With this community, what we are running is try to detect the talent and take advantage of my entrepreneurship. Personally, I visited more than 100 countries in my life, and this culture open in my understanding with no borders in my mind, and my pulse for the entrepreneurship allows to detect the talent and give the talent our networking theory through different elements of that are compartmental DAOs with a particular governance. We are very focused on the SDGs. You can detect it in this slide different SDGs that we pursue, but the main one was number 17 with University, whereby we generate an international and global joint venture with a smart social city. A smart social city has got a joint venture itself with the United Nations Habitat to deploy not only a smart city, to empower the citizens of that smart cities and get the social scope in this smart city conceptualization. And last year, it was one of another greatest moment, because pursuing this governance, we decided to launch this year condominium governance and provide Pax Technologica. This concept makes us to focus on the SDG 16, and is based on different testing we are doing with the Global Navigation Satellite System. Last year, we launched Claudia, which is a web application, but also a DAO that I will explain, and I will explain also Greenfilling very quick. Claudia is just a simple mechanism to survey fairness of opinion in different kind of use cases. We are utilizing Claudia to testing the thermometer, and we can parameterize Claudia for carbon footprint calculation, for detecting the GDPR compliance. Everything, as you can see, is focused on an independent compliance to provide to the Oracle. So everything is configured just to provide digital evidences. And we were in the jurisprudence of Spain, because we provide one digital court evidence that was approved by the judge, and one of our clients won this case thanks to that digital evidences. With Claudia, basically we track 3 regular events, as you can see in this slide, but herein was the learning process, whereby we implemented 4 different kind of proof of concepts. 2 of them, Seminci is for a film festival, international film festival, was just the proof of model. At INATBA, in the convergence, it was a little bit more stress, Claudia, under extensibility proof of concept. The Culture Gal, which is for 14,000 attendees, was really the final testing. And suddenly, at the end of the year, in the COP25, we were selected to be part of the scientific task force for Greenfilling project. The tech attributes that we have deployed right now, thanks to Lumiversity, is based on the DAO scopes. We are testing infrachain, but we are mainly on Aragon focus right now for governance modeling of the DAOs. We have different kind of SDKs, and these software development kits allow us to integrate interoperability under a side chain that we have built on the top of Ethereum as a layer 2.0. So we have a platform called Butter as well, which is an open source permissionless DLT with attributes for interoperate with different kind of blockchains. About Greenfilling was last success, and it's a project launched by the Eurofilling Foundation and the XBRL financial reporting that the banking sector is obliged. It's under the convener of Alastria, which is very influential on the space of standards internationally, and is the National Consortium of Spain for Blockchain and the Digital Economy. In this task force, we have a challenge, which is to generate green reporting via a tool with a mix of XBRL, but integrating a layer for blockchain. Right now, I am leading under the scope of INATBA working group of interoperability as co-chair, to try to join the efforts of INATBA and everywhere, because it's a global initiative for volunteers, and Climate Trade is our key partner and a key leader of the project worldwide. Finally, I want to thank you, all of you, for your attentive listening. This picture reflects how happy an entrepreneur can be once understand the importance of the standards for their business, but also for the community. And this is the picture of the deliverables of ITUT, which was published, and this link you can check and go. and download all the publications and deliverables that are already able to download here in this link. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ismail. I think it was a lot of information packed in a small amount of time. And as you know, we do have a time limitation. So I would request you to stay there. And, once we have Siddharth coming in and he would ask you more questions. Now we join Pawan in Hyderabad. And we welcome Pawan now from Chitmunks. Over to you, Pawan, for sharing the Indian use cases.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Today, I will be presenting my use case, especially in terms of the way we have implemented the blockchain solution here. It's not just a use case which is in pilot phase, but we have kind of taken this solution beyond pilot and implemented across the state. So, as Sachin was mentioning, chit fund is not just an Indian phenomena, but it is more of a global phenomena. Over 66 countries actually use this kind of instruments, financial instrument, with different names though. Okay, in India we call it as chit fund, but in North America it's called Tandas, and Brazil Consortia, and different names. In China it's Hui, and Roscas is the typical name which we give it to them. So I'll just take a minute to explain how this works, right? I mean, if you see this page, right, a typical way a chit group works here is, right, let's say there are 25 people who are actually contributing $4,000 per month, which kind of contributes it into 100,000 rupees, 100,000, right? Now this 100,000 rupees can be given to one person in this lot, and that is identified by a process called auction. The subscriber who wins the bid will get this money. And for example, say one customer who has bid for say $30,000, which is about 30% of the 100,000 value, 100,000. The prize money, which is actually the customer gets to take, is only 70,000 rupees. So the customer, the subscriber or customer who's actually bidding the money is bidding only for 70,000 rupees, 70,000 here, and the whatever is left on the 30,000 rupees is kind of given back to the group as a dividend, which means to say everybody gets, let's say 20 after taking the 5% as the commission value. So this is how a registered chit fund actually works. Okay, if you look at it here, the advantage of this instrument is especially in India, it is a legal and registered business, which means to say there is a private company, private limited company, which is doing these operations, and they get to take the commission, the 5% of this value as their money. In most of the other nations, it is kind of a social fund where a group of people, community of people come together and take the money. Probably they will not have dividends, or they might have a very less dividend also. The interest is more in terms of pooling the money and giving it to one of the community member. That is how it is done. But in India, it is a business. It's a standard business which is operated by a central government act. There is a government act which actually helped them to run this. So if you in a registered business, I mean, again, just to break down chit fund for you, chit fund is nothing but it's more of a savings and borrowings together. I mean, first of its kind financial inclusion product. Long before even people talked about banking and financial services, this kind of activity was very prominent across the nations, right? So in a registered business in India, there are many touch points. Typically, if you can imagine, this is you can see here. I mean, the register office is the place where the touch points are already connected. So every transaction, there is kind of a flow which links back to this register, and all of this activity kind of is done today manually. You can imagine the kind of paperwork which is kind of generated, and this process completely is an inefficient process, which means that, I mean, going by what you are seeing on the screen, probably you can imagine, and the kind of money which rotates in this space, right? I mean, imagine one such office in India actually, especially in Telangana, can handles up to about 200,000 customers information, and close to about 2,000 to 4,000 crores of money. I mean, I'm talking in Indian terms. I mean, if you convert it into millions, it's about 400 million rupees, which we are talking about. And imagine tracking such a business or administering such a business in this manner is a completely inefficient and reactive system, which is where the problems are. So many of these businesses actually take leverage of this kind of offerings and kind of cheat the people as well. So they don't have. So what we have done, I mean, we are a startup from Telangana, especially from Hyderabad. We are working in this space, the Roscas and chit fund space, for almost like 4 years now, and we understood that the problem is deep in terms of establishing the trust between all the parties. And in a typical Rosca system, there are multiple players. You can think of here as a regulators, and the entities like registrations and stamps department is one of the regulator, and the companies who are actually participating, and then there are banks who are actually taking the money. All the money transfer happens between the banks only, and then there are other ecosystem players who wants to actually kind of feed on this data as well. Imagine Telangana is housed to, I mean, I'll show you the metrics as we go forward. So what we have done is, we started building the India's first of its kind blockchain network, especially for chit fund business, chit funds. We started working with the regulators and the chit fund companies, and we have extended it to the subscribers, and we are slowly onboarding multiple players here. So it is not just digitizing, but we are saying that we are catalyzing this financial inclusive ecosystem beyond digitization. That is the purpose. I mean, by doing this, we are making chit funds more accessible, credible, and rewarding. And we bring the technology also to play into these companies. Now, why blockchain? I mean, imagine so many players interacting between them, and the kind of money, if you look at, I mean, close to 19,000 crores, which is like 19,000 is like 1,900. 19,000 crore, I mean, 19,000 crores of money is kind of rotated across across Telangana alone, which is a big money. And then this kind of translates into trust between all the parties. So there are multiple parties who are actually signing this contract, which means a group of 50, one group holding 50 people who are not known to each other is actually trusting a contract between the chit fund company and the subscriber. And then there are auctions happening in the system, which is more of a proof to the regulator that they are participating. And also this ledger, which is actually common between all these parties, plays a very important role to be acting as a single source of truth, right? So that's where this ledger is designed that way. And we have kind of automated the entire business tools kind of thing, especially for the chit fund act, what is applicable and all, as kind of smart contracts. And it is more of a we're trying to disintermediate the chit fund administrators here. So by bringing the regulators in this space, right, the activity whatever they are supposed to do is kind of pushed into the smart contract part, and eventually there should be a place where their intervention becomes less. That's the reason why we believe it is a very good use case for implementing. This is a very this is a place where this is how we have designed our node structures. Different organizations, we kind of we use Hyperledger Fabric, and we kind of get into this propose, endorse, and commit kind of framework. Then there are different kind of proposers in the today. The way the organization is evolving is more of a the regulator plays the role of an endorser, but more and more parties will come into the picture as the network will evolve. That is how we have designed this network. And this is a very list of services. Like, I mean, you can imagine for subscribers, now they have access to validated and registered chit fund companies and the groups across the state. They can actually do all grievance management online. All payments and things are all completely digital and all. The biggest thing for the regulator is they have a dashboard or an organizational view of everything what is happening in the state. Imagine that kind of view from this kind of system, right? I mean, if one of, and there are at least 14 different offices like this across the Telangana state alone. So getting a dashboard view for them was a big deal, and it's kind of completely managed on the blockchain network as we speak today. Some of the metrics in Telangana, we launched this in October 2018, and we onboarded all the 14 regulator office. There are close to 25,000 groups here, which is like which kind of translates into about 1 million subscribers here. This is the kind of money which we are talking about. We have seen close to a 4 lakh transactions already happening on the platform, and so many blocks have been also already created on the platform as well. And this is of course implemented by us, a startup. The impact is simple. I mean, by bringing this platform on in Telangana, so what we have kind of essentially done is we simplified and reinforced the chit fund process, especially this process, the way the saving the money and all is kind of actually very useful for the bottom of the pyramid and middle of the pyramid, MSMEs as well. So we believe we have actually kind of reimagined and reinforced this trust, especially in this instrument across Telangana. That's a short story of us, and thank you for the opportunity, guys.
Thank you, Pawan. Thank you, Pawan, for this. And now I would welcome Siddharth to the presentation.
Sure.
And I don't know,
Thanks,
Siddharth, if you have.
Thanks, Sachin. Thanks, everyone.
Welcome again.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I think you have a bit of echo, but before you start, Siddharth, just to give you a bit of overview. So we have participants for this webinar from over 10 countries. So it's a quite international that you have. And now that you have heard of,
Awesome.
three presenters bringing different point of views, I would request you to also cover some ground what you think from Indian point of view is missing. So over to you, and then I would request you, once you are done, to start moderation, asking questions, and I would be assigning you questions from the audience. So I request audience to start typing their questions before Siddharth takes them up. Over to you, Siddharth.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Sachin. Thanks to all of my previous speakers who have made brilliant shared brilliant use cases, and a very warm welcome to all the people who have joined the webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Siddharth. I'm an associate director with KPMG as part of the cybersecurity and regulatory compliance function, a blockchain enthusiast, as well as looking after emerging technology risk and working with a lot of regulators, corporates, and multiple use cases for blockchain and DLT across risk. What I'll try and do is I'll give you a view of what India has been doing in the blockchain and the DLT space, while we've been working with Rapolas and others on the standardization side as part of ITUT, as well as ISO and others. India is actually marked quite a bit by the sheer number of startups that we have. So I'll try and cover what the government of India is doing, what the private sector is doing, and what the large corporates with large development centers in India are doing in the DLT and blockchain space. So just to start off, I think, Pawan, thanks for sharing what the government of Telangana has done with you on chit funds. At the same time, state governments across India, as well as the federal government, are coming across the use cases as well as policies governing AI and blockchain. I would call it out as DLT. And they have been one of the strongest proponents of actually using DLT across multiple use cases. And one of the use cases that we see prominently arriving is land records registration, as well as registration and putting up of documents, similar to what Rapolas position in terms of identification documents and others. This is more on birth registration, death registration, and most of the other certificates which are provided to you by the municipal corporation of your city, village, or district. That is quite often being put up on DLT so that people are able to authenticate the documents and download the same. So the governments across India, state governments as well as the federal government, have been proponents of using DLT as a technology. The first use case, as I mentioned, was primarily on records registration, but we are now looking at use cases similar to one that Rapulus mentioned, along using a DLT for identifying fake certificates, because that's something which is happening quite a bit in the world, and the cost of actually verifying certificates, professional as well as educational or government documentation, is quite high. So the government came out with something which is known as a digital library. It's known as a digital locker, which has been linked to the national identity card in India, which is known as Aadhaar. And there are plans afoot to see if that can be linked or put up on a blockchain. There are a number of startups working in this space, and one of the use cases was presented as part of PC 307, the ISO blockchain community. But moving on, we are seeing use cases across the board, from healthcare to oil and gas to even the power grid corporations and power generators, to as well as the distribution companies now looking at DLT as a technology which can be implemented for bringing in about transparency across the board. That is something which is happening on the government, federal and state government side. If you look at the financial services space, NPCI, which is the National Payments Corporation in India, which provides market infrastructure for instantaneous fund transfer payments. We also operate something known as the RuPay network, which is similar to how your Visa and your MasterCard work. They have come out with their own settlement system based on blockchain, which is called Vajra. This happened about 2 weeks back. So just to give you a view, we have Swift. Swift globally has only one entity, but in India they've actually tied up with close to 76 banks to open a local intermediary, which is now working on looking at DLT use cases across the board. So there's a lot of things happening from the market services infrastructure perspective as well. Then we have the Securities and Exchange Board of India, which is a market regulator for capital markets, which is also looking at DLT use cases for settlement of securities as well as OTC trades and others. That's something which is happening in the capital market space. Now, if you look at the startup landscape in India, it's a happening place. That's because there are a lot of VCs, there are a lot of PE firms, family offices, all looking to invest. And also government of India came out with something which is known as Digital India, where it has been supporting a lot of entrepreneurs to fund down start up with their own startups and see how they can actually employ more people. So we are seeing a plethora of use cases coming about from the startup ecosystem. A lot of funding which is also going towards them, a lot of mentors. So we recently started off with fintech centers supported by NASSCOM, which is the national international organization working for the improvement of technology service providers and others. We also have industry bodies like CII and others, which is the Confederation of Indian Industries, supporting many events like the World Blockchain Summit, many of them happening here in India. So it's an exciting time to be a startup here in India. Plenty of ideas, plenty of funding, plenty of accelerators available. The other part being, there are a lot of global captive centers in India. So global captive centers are primarily wholly owned subsidiaries or affiliates of large global corporations. Just to take an example, Shell. Shell has one of the largest IT technology centers here in India, outside of The Hague. And there's a lot of work which is actually happening around blockchain there. We're talking about emerging technology, it's not only about DLT, but AI, drones, and others. There's a lot of work which is happening. And all of these innovation and development centers are working as a joint model. It's a same team which is working seamlessly across Europe as well as India. So that's a success story that we have to present to the entire community which is joined onto the call. Because here we have an idea, for example, commodity trading platform. I cannot take names right now, but maybe in a later date. It's a commodity trading platform which is going live in Europe with 4 large energy companies, a couple of banks. Indian banks have also joined that consortia. That's an example of where the initiative was taken by a large French bank, The development was done out of Paris as well as out of India, and that has gone live. So there are plenty of such examples where technologists across borders don't mean much right now, because teams are working seamlessly in an integrated fashion, and there are success stories to share which have come about. That's a bit in terms of what I wanted to share in terms of the entire landscape. But at the same time, there's a lot of focus from regulators, both regionally as well as EU and others, in terms of standardization as well as governance of DLT. For example, countries like Malta have actually come out with standards in terms of what smart contracts need to be, the security of that. So there's a lot of work which is happening on the EU side, and India is currently doing a catch-up in terms of the Reserve Bank of India as well as the Indian Standards Institute all coming together to try and see they're working on standards which will be rolled out to across India shortly. So there's a lot of work which is happening, a lot of partnership which is happening between regulators across Europe as well as in India to try and see how do we synergize, how do we have common standards, common regulations which are in line with global standards like ISO and others. That is something which I wanted to share. And happy to take any questions before I move on to the panelists to ask them more questions about the amazing presentations that they just shared. Sachin?
Thank you, Siddharth. I think you have a lot of interesting information to share, and I've been getting comments from participants that where is the presentation. So if I may request you that all the good things that you just shared, if you would have time, once the webinar is over, maybe you can send us something in writing, and we can put it on the project website that the wider audience can benefit. And having said that, I think you must have prepared some tough questions for our panelists today. So I request you to start with that. At the same time, I have been getting questions that I am assigning to you. And some questions are named specifically, let's say, to Rapolas or to Ismail. So I have also assigned those questions to them. So I request you, in interest of time, pick those where you think the wider audience will benefit, and over to you. So I request you to take not more than 15 minutes and ask as many questions, and also request panelists to keep answers brief. Over to you.
Sure. Thank you, panelists. Thanks for joining. And my first question is to Rapulas. You did mention a lot of interesting use cases, Rapulas, in terms of the notarization and documents for auditing purpose using DLT for that. So I just wanted to pick your brain on that. Is that something that has gone live, or are you working? If you'd like to share more information on that, because if you look at how corporate governance and standards are working, that's something of an interesting area for a lot of governments as well as private sector and from a corporate governance area. So would you like to share some more information on that? Has it gone live, or what is your position on that?
Hello, thanks for asking. Basically, these 4 use cases are currently under development. Actually, the first deadline for the developers was mid of January, so they are a little bit late. In February, we will have a meeting with the member states at the political level, and I hope until then they will have something of more consistent, basically, to really demonstrate to the member states. So I would say that these use cases will be up and running sometime during the first half of this year. This is my personal expectation. Actually, when it comes to self-sovereign identity and diploma use cases, self-sovereign identity use case is far more advanced. Diploma use cases is still a little bit behind, and basically, likely diploma use case will take more time to roll out. So, but on one hand, on the other hand, since it's under development, it has more possibilities.
Thanks, Rapulas.
To foresee collaboration with Indian diploma use case, because as I know, India has some diploma use case in process as well, and here could be a collaboration possibility.
Sure. Absolutely. And just to add to that, Rapulas, there's one which has been initiated by the government of India, wherein as part of your DigiLocker, which has been included, or it has been paired with your national identity, which is known as Aadhaar in India, which has got all of your biometric information as well. That is something where all the colleges and universities are actually uploading validated copies, transcripts onto a portal which can be accessed only by you using a combination of your biometric as well as a two-factor authentication. And a lot of startups in the space are now actually trying to put it up onto the blockchain to make it even more secure and to be shared over a private network with only subscribers to that particular mod. So that is something which is happening, and I think that's a use case where both India and EU can definitely work on. The other interesting aspect that you covered was mostly on self-sovereign identity framework. So is that something that you would like to share more? The framework, I believe, is still being developed. But is there any other conversations that EU and India are having on something similar?
For self-sovereign identity, so far I have not heard anything to this direction, but it's not that doors are closed. Actually, I think we can definitely talk and explore collaboration possibilities on this side as well.
Sure.
I don't think anyone would object. And
Sure.
in particular,
and Rapulus, there was a question
very...
for you from. Sorry, the audio was a little bit bad, Rapulus. If you can just wrap up that particular question. So there are a couple of questions from the audience that I would like to jump to before I reach out to the other panelists. Rapulus, were you trying to make a point?
I'm sorry, audio is a little bit not very well functioning. I didn't really hear very well. I think probably we can basically, the conclusion for this, basically we can really explore collaboration possibilities, and we're very much open to collaboration, and maybe we can think about the next steps, how we can take it further.
Sure.
But
Rapulus, there was a question for you from Louis.
Siddharth, if I may intervene.
So he had a point about.
So there are some questions for Rapulus from audience. If you want to read
Louis?
it out. So one is
that's
from
what I'm doing right now. So
yeah.
So there are a couple of questions for you, Rapulus. So if I may, so they wanted to know more about the actual implementation of how is EU using blockchain for EV charging infra and smart grids. That was a question from Anuj. We had a question from Gusard as well. So we are talking about a permission DL, therefore this is not public and open. Could you confirm that this is the case and there's no mining, and who's managing the distributed ledger in each of these use cases? That was a generic question to all of the panelists from Gusard. I'll come down to this question from Louis shortly.
Yes, that is, thanks, very good question. Thanks a lot. That is correct. In EPSI and in a lot of other iterations, we have so-called permissioned blockchain, where basically to be part of blockchain, you need to have obtained certain permission to participate there. And actually, architecture there is based on Ethereum. So basically, the code of Ethereum is taken as the basis, and what they develop is so-called fork of the code. So it's basically reusing it, but then adapting to particular use case in this case of EPSI needs. And in Ethereum, they had mining, then they are theoretically moving to the proof of stake. But in EPSI, it is not used proof of stake, but basically proof of authority. And as such, then basically you don't need mining, you don't even need the stake, you just, every node has certain authority to participate into blockchain, and it is sufficient. For us, we are not really focusing here on exchange of but trusted data storage to store data in a trusted way. That is the main focus of this particular implementation.
So Louis had a question again. So a couple of questions from him. So the first one being, he's asking about the proof of authority in blockchain is just a DLT. So maybe we would like to cover some of the different types of proof of identity or proof of stake, proof of work that you typically are using for your DLT-based platforms. Would you like to cover the consensus mechanism that is primarily being used in some of your platforms? Maybe Ismail, Isma, or Pawan, would you like to take that particular question? What type of consensus mechanism are you using? So are you primarily sticking to generic platforms, or is there any specific platform that you prefer for many of these use cases?
I can explain that in my particular case, as I said before, we are running 27 different nodes for different platforms. So it depends of the compliance needs of the case, whereby we utilize one or other kind of mechanism. But in our platform, we are utilizing a hybrid mechanism based on asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance. We are utilizing quorum, and we are utilizing as well Codius as the first stage for the Oracle. But we are very agnostic in terms of one or other. If we need to assure the time stamping, we focus to match different kind of the application of one of our APIs. We launch a triple anchor, one to Bitcoin, another to Ethereum Classic, another to Ethereum itself. So if the time stamping match is the strongest, the proof of compliance. In terms of the response for the proof of authority, there are a lot of technicalities of the concept of authority. Authority to do what? This is one question. Legitimacy and authority. To be honest, the governance of this proof of authority at the end of the day would be based on a combination of policies and guidelines that give the completeness to the governance. This is my space, but I can profound if the person who questioned wants to receive scientific ideas or so on, more profound in if I can understand where is he or she exploring.
Thanks for that, Isma.
Siddharth, I just want to highlight to you two last questions. So if you, and I was looking at questions,
sure.
So if you can address the energy use case in blockchain, both from India and Europe.
Sure,
I think,
perfect.
Yeah.
Sure. So primarily there's a lot of focus on the energy sector. So energy is a broad term that I'm using. I'm not only talking about power generation and others, but if I look at oil and gas primarily. From an oil and gas perspective, there's a lot of commodity trading which happens in the oil markets. That's a use case which is currently being put on DLT. The other use case that I've seen primarily being used is for power distribution as well as power trading, because if you understand how power is generated, power is being generated across different power stations and power is traded across countries by the grid. So there's a lot of focus on that and using DLT for power trading as well. That's another use case that I have seen coming up of late. These are the two primary use cases that I have seen which have been industrialized and will be put into effect soon, both in India as well as some parts of EU. But most of the other use cases in the energy side that I've seen have come up mostly in US and quite a bit in Australia as well. And China is also doing a lot of interesting work on those lines. So we'll be happy to share more details on that. Maybe I can send you a couple of notes or a couple of links that you can have a look as well. Coming back to another question that I've seen in terms of what are the existing blockchain compliance standards in India. India, as I mentioned, each state is coming up with its own policy, but it's more of a guidance note which is coming out. And the central government working along with the Reserve Bank of India, Revit, and ISI, which is the Indian Standards Institute, they are coming up, they are drafting standards for DLT. One of the other regulators which has recently come out with standards is the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, with the privacy bill coming into play already. The do not disturb registry which was there, that is something which will be digitized soon, and users will have the right of providing consent to whether their data can be shared with multiple retailers or anybody else who would like to use their data, and what data can be shared. That is something which by the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India is currently working on. That is something which will be coming up soon as well. And SEBI and others are already working on governance of smart contracts and others which will be coming up. There's another point that Louis mentioned on decentralization and centralization on the issue of governance. That's a topic which is quite controversial, and as you rightly mentioned, that is something which is still being debated widely across regions. So we hope that there's no straight answer to that particular question that you're posting. In terms of Europe, regulators are again working quite a bit on it, but individual countries have come out with guidelines and regulations prior to the European Banking Authority coming out. For example, Gibraltar, Malta, they have come out with standards for governance, interoperability, as well as on smart contracts. It is there on the regulator's website for all of you to look at. But most of the regulators in the region, at least in Asia, has been focusing on digital custodians, as well as on cryptocurrencies and other forms of digital assets, and securing and governance of digital custodians. So those are the primary areas that we have seen regulations coming in. But as the area evolves, we'll see more and more regulators coming in.
Very quick, my response.
Just hoping to
yeah, very quick, my response. For instance, in Kingdom of Spain, within Alastria, we are more than 500 companies and public and academic institutions. And really, we are very proactive because the environment of the framework of Europe really is not necessary to regulate, in my personal opinion, the blockchain of the DLT itself, even though it's necessary to regulate some new business models in the segment of different kind of industry. And the efforts are under the umbrella of Alastria right now in Spain and are giving a kind of legal facility to this a niche of new business model and accommodate with the regulators.
appreciate it. And thanks for all the great questions, and many of you have shared a couple of inputs as well. All are well taken. Any other questions? We'll be happy to answer that if we have some more time. Sachin, over to you. Isma, would you like to cover a bit more on the climate trade and the interoperability that you're currently talking about in terms of what all DLT platforms are currently supported, or are you working with any other agencies on the climate trade bit that you spoke about some time back, Isma?
Yeah, sure. If you give me the floor, even I can open the website, which is open everything, and it's really very is really very easy to follow the activities, even join to the volunteer task force. Could you give me the floor and I show, or I can write it here on the chat and you can get it on. But basically, it is really focused.
Ismail, may I request to type in the chat? I think that is better. It will go to everyone.
Sure.
And Siddharth, I didn't realize that I was on mute, but I was saying that we are already over time. So once Ismail finishes, if all the panelists want to make any last comment, we can conclude after that. Thank you, Ismail.
Oh, you're welcome. It's already in the chat, but it's for the organizers, so you can propagate to the rest of the attendees. Well, basically, it's an initiative to take advantage of the taxonomy that are already implemented by the banks and the financial sector for the financial reporting, which is XBRL, connecting as a standard. There are different kind of standards, and utilize the blockchain and the DLTs technologies to generate an interoperability language whereby the same model of taxonomy of financial reporting apply to a green reporting as a tool, because there will be an obligation for big companies to issue on their compliance commitments and programs this kind of green reporting. Big companies, listed companies, and so on. This is how it's starting in Spain by law. And climate trade is another small and medium enterprise of Spain, which with myself as micro enterprise get a lot of feelings since the beginning. And thanks to Claudia, we could parameterize Claudia to calculate with their tools the carbon footprint. This is one step of the governance model for the taxonomy of this reporting, green reporting by the whole initiative. So that ability we are going to experiment at 3 different levels: one, calculation, reduction, and compensation. And climate trade is giving a great platform based on Ethereum with a very usable API that allows to generate the compensation. And these 3 steps, in combination with the taxonomy that are already under standardization of different kind of XBRL for financial reporting, the financial sector of Spain joining a table with the registry, general registry of registers, of commercial registers of Spain, and different kind of actors from the regulator, like the Central Bank of Spain, Eurofilling Foundation, and other that are practitioners of this XBRL taxonomy. XBRL.
We can probably stop here, and
yeah,
I think
perfect.
we have probably a lot of interest in this topic, and I think we can have more follow-up webinars. I think Siddharth, Rapolas, Ismail, and Pawan, you may all agree. And maybe in the next webinar, I will try to keep longer time for Q&A, because I still see a lot of questions are coming and they are specifically naming you people. So Pawan, are you still there? Do you want to have any response? I think Siddharth wanted you to answer.
Yes.
Very briefly.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I got one personal question as well in terms of, asking whether is it a real blockchain use case as well. So we started it as I just want to mention here that, it's a private blockchain. We started as a private permission blockchain, but we foresee it to grow into a hybrid blockchain where, we will have more participants coming. It's an ecosystem which we are trying to build. And I think the conversations which we are having happening, it is more relevant, and we can definitely add more as we go forward in the future webinars as well. So, Sachin, I'll be happy to answer more questions if there are anything.
Any last comment from you, Rapolas?
I would like to thank everyone for attention, and I very much welcome the initiative to have more webinars in the future as well.
Siddharth, any last comments from you?
No, I'd like to thank all the participants, the panelists, and yourself for organizing this, and happy to take any questions offline and answer them, because we're not able to answer maybe a couple of them here. We'll be happy to address those offline.
Yeah, so I think at this point, let me take the responsibility, and I will send you all the questions to all of you. And if you want to give me a written response to those questions, I'm happy to upload them on the website and also email to all the participants, because we value everybody's time and contribution here. And the second thing I want to highlight is that we could not have Mr. J. Chaudhary join today in the webinar. He's the one who got all of us together. So let me publicly thank him as well. And I would request you, Siddharth and Pawan, both, maybe, you can brief him, and, basis the feedback, collective feedback, and plan future webinar series. And same goes for you, Rapolas and Ismail. I think today's webinar must have given you a dipstick test that definitely people are interested in this topic. And I would request that the second webinar, if we want to do, could we focus more on the energy aspect? I think in Europe, climate change is becoming an important topic. But here in India also, I can see that a lot of questions are coming on electric vehicles and those kind of things where people are getting sensitive to their consumption of energy. So with that, I would really like to thank all the participants for your patience and your time, and my experts here in terms of the panelists. I thank all of you, and I look forward to create more such conversations with you in future. Thank you very much.